Have you ever heard of a lake born from a broken promise? Let me take you on a journey to the heart of North Sumatra, to a time long, long ago, where our story begins with a young, hard-working farmer named Toba. Toba was known throughout his village for his kindness, but he led a solitary life. His small hut stood by a river, and every single day he would cast his line into the water, hoping for a good catch to sustain himself. His days were simple, filled with the rhythm of the land and the flow of the river. He worked hard, he was honest, but he was also lonely, often dreaming of having a family to share his life with. One particularly sunny afternoon, Toba felt a strong tug on his fishing line. It was heavier than usual, fighting with a strength he'd never encountered before. With all his might he reeled it in, his heart pounding with anticipation. What could it be? A fish so large it could feed him for a week. As it emerged from the sparkling water, he gasped. It wasn't just a big fish. It was a magnificent golden fish, its scales shimmering like 1,000 tiny suns. It was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. As he carefully held the fish ready to take it home, something unbelievable happened. A soft, clear voice spoke to him. "Please, kind farmer, don't eat me." Toba looked around, bewildered. Was he imagining things? He was all alone. Then, the fish spoke again, its tiny mouth moving. "Let me go, and I swear I will repay your kindness in ways you cannot imagine." Toba was utterly stunned. A talking fish. This was something straight out of the old tales his grandmother used to tell. His heart, filled with compassion and awe, couldn't bear the thought of harming such a magical creature. Instead of preparing it for his supper, he gently placed the golden fish into a large clay jar filled with fresh water and took it back to his humble hut. He felt a strange connection to this fish, a feeling that his life was about to change forever. The next day, after a long morning of working in his fields, Toba returned home, tired and hungry. But as he stepped inside his hut, he stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide with disbelief. The familiar, simple room was spotless, and a delicious aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air. And there, standing in the middle of his hut, was the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on. Her hair was as dark as the night sky, and her smile was as warm as the morning sun. He stood there, speechless, until she spoke with the same gentle voice he'd heard from the golden fish. "My name is Princess Fish," she said with a graceful bow. "I was a princess from a faraway kingdom, cursed by a powerful sorcerer to live as a fish. Your kindness has broken the spell. To repay you, I wish to become your wife, if you will have me." Toba's heart soared with joy. His lonely days were over. He couldn't believe his good fortune, but the princess had one very serious condition. "You must promise me one thing," she said, her expression turning grave. "You must never ever reveal to anyone that I was once a fish. If you break this promise, a terrible disaster will befall us all without a moment's hesitation." Toba gave his solemn vow. He would guard her secret with his life. And so, Toba and the former fish princess were married. Their little hut, once quiet and empty, was now filled with laughter and love. They lived a life of pure happiness, and Toba felt like the luckiest man in the world. Before long, their happiness grew even greater with the birth of a son, whom they named Samosia. Samosia was a bright and energetic boy, the apple of his parents' eyes. However, he had one rather large quirk, an enormous appetite. It seemed no amount of food could ever truly fill his stomach. He would often eat the portions meant for the entire family, leaving little for his hard-working father. One sweltering afternoon, Toba was toiling away in the distant fields under the hot sun. His wife prepared a hearty lunch for him and asked Samosia to deliver it. "Take this to your father, my dear," she said, handing him a basket filled with rice, fish, and vegetables. "He must be very hungry." Samosia obediently took the basket and set off. The journey to the fields was long, and the delicious smell wafting from the basket was more than he could resist. His stomach rumbled loudly. "Just one small bite," he thought to himself. "Father won't even notice," but one bite turned into another, and then another. By the time he reached his father, the basket was nearly empty, with only a few scraps of food left. Toba, who had been working tirelessly for hours, was famished and exhausted. When he saw the half-eaten meal, his patience, worn thin by the heat and hard labor, finally snapped. A wave of frustration and anger washed over him. Forgetting his solemn promise in his rage, he yelled at the boy, his voice echoing across the valley. "You lazy, greedy boy, you are nothing but a fish child." The moment those fateful words left his lips, the world seemed to hold its breath. A deafening clap of thunder ripped through the clear sky. Dark, ominous clouds gathered in an instant, and a torrential downpour began, unlike any rain they had ever seen. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble violently. Toba's wife, hearing his shout from their hut, came running towards him, tears streaming down her face. Her heart was broken. "You broke your promise," she cried out in anguish. "You broke your sacred vow. Now the disaster I warned you about will come." As she spoke, the earth cracked open. A massive spring of water erupted from the deep fissures in the ground, shooting high into the air. The water gushed out with unstoppable force, flooding the entire valley at an incredible speed. Toba, realizing the terrible gravity of his mistake, tried desperately to reach his wife and son, but the rising water was too powerful. The valley where they had built their life, where they had shared so much joy, was quickly swallowed by the churning, angry water. Toba disappeared beneath the waves, and his wife, the beautiful fish princess, vanished back into the watery realm from which she came. The flood continued to rise, relentless and unforgiving, until it formed a vast, deep lake. Only their son Samasea survived. The powerful currents carried him to a piece of land that remained above the water, which became a small island in the very center of the newly formed lake, and from that day forward, the great body of water was known as Lake Toba, a stunningly beautiful but solemn reminder of a promise broken. The island in its heart was named Samasea Island, in memory of the boy who was at the center of the tragedy. The story teaches us a timeless lesson: always keep your promises and learn to control your anger, because a few thoughtless words, spoken in a moment of fury, can have consequences that last forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of Indonesian folklore. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from around the world. We'll see you in the next video.